Tonight, former Majority Leader in Parliament Felix Osei Asare is urging MPs to pass a vote of no confidence in the Finance Minister for violating laws that require him to release money into statutory funds like the GET Fund, NHIS and the Road Fund.
Minister of Finance considered this very Saturday, and I told him my view. So whatever I'm saying is no more a rumor. He himself knows my view. I told him if I were the leader of the House, you would have definitely been censored by now.
So is Mr. Osei Asare's call reasonable, and does his position reflect the views of the minority in Parliament? What would be the implication of a censure if indeed MPs go ahead to take such an action against the Finance Minister? This is today's big story. Former Majority Leader Felix Osei Asare made the call at the roundtable discussion on the challenges of consensus building. Let's first hear Mr. Asare's comments and we'll continue.
I told him if I were the leader of the House, you would have definitely been censored by now. His reason was that we don't have money. And you must find out why those laws were made. It is not for nothing that Article 252 was provided in the 1992 Constitution. And let me quote that very well. There shall be a fund to be known as the District Assembly's Common Fund. Subject to the provision of this Constitution, Parliament shall annually make a provision for the allocation of not less than 5% of the total revenues of Ghana to the District Assemblies for development. And the amount shall be paid into the District Assembly's Common Fund in quarterly installments. If the Minister of Finance comes to tell that, yes, you have approved this, and that becomes part of the appropriation bill, and then you fail to pay, that's gross. So I told him, if you think that the country is so poor that they cannot do that, then get the laws amended. Because whenever people quote about Obama said we need to build big institutions and all these things, it is this process that is not making it possible for them to build institutions. Because if a district assembly is waiting, knowing very well that he is anticipating X% of the 5%, and at the moment it was supposed to be 7.5%. So immediately the parliament approves of the budget, every district assembly has an idea of what is going to get. They start planning. Then for 3 quarters, nothing is there. We should then must all close all the district assemblies because they can't function.
Right, so let's get to speak to some MPs and members of the Finance Committee. Mr. Kweku Kwating's MP for Wasi West, I beg your pardon. Mr. Kwating, we're happy that you could join us. Now, Felix Osei Asare is saying that for 3 quarters, statutory funds have not been paid. And he says that, well, I feel that he's saying it lightly, that MPs should pass a vote of no confidence in the Finance Minister, said Tekpe. Is this really important? Is it necessary to pass a vote of no confidence? Or you feel that something more stringent should be done? Mr. Kwating?
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you whether you feel that Mr. Osei Asare's call is reasonable.
Well, I think the point the former majority leader, Honorable Osei Asare, is making is that the finance minister is responsible for disbursement. And if you recall, on this subject about the payment of statutory funds, the matter went to court, and there was a court order on the finance minister to comply with the law and make these payments without default. And if you give me 30 seconds, we ought to understand that these statutory payments are money that have been collected. It's not as though it is money government has to look for. It is a percentage of money that have already been collected that the finance minister calculates and put a certain percentage into these funds. So the money has been collected already. Now, if this doesn't happen, then I think the point Honorable Osei Asare is making is that the man who has a responsibility to make these payments should have a question to answer. And my understanding of his call is that he's inviting Parliament to take a look at the conduct of the finance minister in these matters and to see what sanctions ought to be applied. And I think I cannot disagree with that. However, we also ought to look at this matter in the broader political context. If a finance minister sits in, say, a cabinet meeting, and cabinet with the president sitting in makes the decision that yes, we know you have to pay, but let's use the money for something else that we, the ruling party or ruling government, considers a better or more urgent priority. Is the finance minister really in a position to go against what a government has collectively decided? So much as he has a responsibility by the text of the law to be the one that should make payments or the one that should withhold payments, yes, we can't blame the finance minister. But I think the bigger blame ought to be going at the government itself and the president. Is the president not aware that these statutory funds are requirements by the transfer of these statutory funds are requirements of law, and that he ought not to default? If he's not aware, is he calling the finance minister to order? I have no doubt that the pressure on the finance minister not to make these payments is coming from the broader government. And for us, it is important that as we call for punishment for the finance minister, we also say something to government that what you're doing is wrong, is unlawful, and in the current circumstances, it's not just against the law, it's a defiance of the court of order. We cannot treat our rule of law this way.
Right. Mr. Kwating, hold on briefly. I have James Avedi, who is chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, also online. Mr. Avedi, so Mr. Kwating is saying that, well, indeed, if the finance minister is not seeing to the payment of statutory funds which have already been collected, then it is fair to call for sanctions against him. Your view on this?
Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. I think that I'm agreeing with Honorable Kwating that we cannot blame the finance minister as an individual in this regard. The finance minister, as he said, sits in cabinet, and therefore, if cabinet decision, he, as the minister, cannot go against that. But there's this point that he made, which is very relevant, and we have to look at it from in deep situation. Now, yeah, it is true that those statutory funds
have not been paid,
are governed by law. The law says that if you collect your tax revenue, 7.5% must go into the administrator of the common fund for disbursement to the local government for development projects. 2.5% must go for VAT, 2.5% must go VAT goes for get fund, and then 2.5% for health insurance. Now, these monies are collected by the government and paid into the consolidated fund. Now, it is from this consolidated fund that the Minister of Finance is mandated by law to transfer within a specified period of time to the institutions that are established for those purposes. Now, the situation that we find ourselves is this, that as a finance minister, in managing the funds available to government, you have expenditure that you need to meet. And the most important one among this expenditure is the compensation, salaries and wages. So the most important thing that the Minister of Finance will do is that whatever comes to me in a year, in a month, I have to make sure that I meet.
So Mr. Beji, what are you suggesting, that perhaps the statutory funds that have been collected already, which are supposed to be paid to institutions like NHIS and Get Fund, are being used to pay salaries and emoluments?
If at the end of the month, whatever is collected is not, after taking the statutory funds out of it, what is left is not enough to meet the wages and salaries, the Minister of Finance will definitely delay the payment of the statutory funds and meet the expenditure for wages and salaries. That is number one. That is number one, and that is what is happening.
And this has been happening for Mr. Abeji, this has been happening for 3 quarters. That's a long time not to pay the statutory funds.
Yes, it's happened. That tells you that as a country we need to look at how we fund our expenditure. We need to look at that. If for the year 2015 we budgeted to receive 32 billion Ghana cedis, our total revenue from taxes and non-tax revenue, and the expenditure that we're going to meet is about 39 billion or 40 billion, then that tells you from day one that whatever is coming is not enough to meet our expenditure. And for that matter, we have to look for means of getting additional revenue.
Right.
So yeah. If for the whole year we're going to spend 12 billion to meet salary, pay 9.7 billion to meet interest payments, and then 7.5 billion for statutory funds, then 6 billion for development expenditure. That tells you that if the money comes, what the Minister of Finance will do is that first, the Minister of Finance must meet the wages and salary expenditure first, then meet the interest payments, then it comes back to the statutory funds. If the funds available is not enough to meet these 2 items, then statutory funds must hold.
Right, Mr. Abeji, quickly, I'll get a response from Kweku Kwating, who is still on the line. Mr. Kwating, you've been listening to Mr. Abeji clearly justifying or clarifying some of the reasons why perhaps the statutory funds are not being paid. Your quick reaction?
So my immediate reaction is that what Honorable Abeji has said, it's an invitation to lawlessness with which I would not want to associate at all.
I see.
To begin with, he probably should be talking about wage overruns and not just the wage bill, because you see, the government budgets for wages, and then the government says we make projections for these statutory funds. Government collects the money, and then the money for the wages, I'm sure, will go to pay wages. Is Honorable Abeji saying that the wage overruns that we register are such that if you consider the default on these statutory funds, they will be the same? No. The fact is that government has been using the money for something else other than wages. And if we would do an investigation and look at...
Mr. Kwati, you are making allegations. You are not helping us substantiate. So your government has been using the money for what else?
Well, the evidence is in the budget. If I look at what has been collected in the name of, say, the National Health Insurance Levy, I know how much. What should go into the District Assembly Common Fund, I know how much. If that money is not going, you can put all that default together and look at the wage overrun that Honorable Abeji is citing as the cause of the problem. And if they do not match, then the money has gone to somewhere else. And it is for government to explain that. And for me, I look at the corruption and the waste we see in the Auditor General's report and all those reports, then I get a sense that the money is not really going into wages. The money is going into many illegitimate expenditures about which we should pay attention and correct. This suggestion of wages as the explanation for the economy not doing well, for government not paying money it should pay, it's just not helpful.
It's just not helpful. Mr. Kwating, we are grateful for your time on today's big story. Thank you very much. Mr. Kwating is MP for Obuasi West and is a member of the Finance Committee of Parliament, chairman of the committee. James Afezi is still online. So, Mr. Afezi, Mr. Kwating's comments suggest or perhaps point to...
Yeah, first of all, I did not say that there is a wage overrun. I didn't mention wage overrun.
Yeah.
I talk about wages as budgeted for. And then also the second point is that if we have budgeted to receive or collect 32 billion Ghana cedis in a year, doesn't mean that from day one that 32 billion is available for spending. The money trickles in every day. So at the end of the month, what comes into the consolidated fund, the Minister of Finance will have to manage that one. If what comes in a month is not enough to meet the wages, the interest payment, and then the statutory funds, the Minister of Finance will prioritize it and ensure that the statutory fund is delayed a bit. Let's meet the wages and salary. Let's meet the interest payment. And then hoping that in the subsequent month, if the money comes is enough, then I can take care of the statutory fund as well. That is how the managing of the fund is.
Yes.
And for that matter, I disagree completely with Watson that wage overrun. Wage overrun doesn't come in here at all. What we are talking about is what have been budgeted for. And because the funds that are coming are not enough to meet all these expenditure items, the Minister of Finance has to prioritize it by delaying one expenditure item for a moment. Now, that is the situation, because if the Minister of Finance decides to pay the statutory fund and delay salary, you know the implication of that decision for our economy.
So what's the Finance Committee of Parliament going to do about this? I mean, you've given us reasons which could be the reasons why you've given us reasons why the statutory funds could have delayed. I beg your pardon, but I mean, if the Finance Committee
in Parliament can only recommend additional means of raising more revenue to meet the expenditure.
But you haven't done that.
Well, we have been doing it in the past. Probably what we have been recommending is not enough. So if I want to levy you additional tax, probably you should accept it, so that when we wanted to pay more tax for government to be able to meet all the expenditure items, you should be able to accept it willingly.
Right, Mr. Avezi, we're grateful that you could join us at such a short notice. Thanks very much. James Avezi is chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Let's get on to the other line and discuss the implications of this on governance in the event in Kweku Kwating. We're told that Kweku Kwating has a quick response to this before we go to David Agbe, Executive Director of the Ghana Institute of Governance. And so, Mr. Kwating, I can hear you.
Yeah, the quick point I wanted to make in response to the point Honorable Agbe has made is this.
That's right.
You see, we're not just talking about month delays. We are talking about the close of the year. In fact, as we speak, if you look at the statutory funds on some of the statutory funds, you would see that by the close of 2014, when all the money has been collected, some of these funds are in default for sometimes 6 months.
6 months.
You cannot attribute that from month-to-month delays. The fact of the matter is that for a financial year, government collects money. The money ought to go into these statutory funds. They don't go. And it is for all of us to investigate and find out where the money is go. I have suggested that we should be looking at the waste. But if we are going to talk about, present this problem as though it is a matter of the month getting to the close, money ought to be transferred, the money is not being transferred, then we're running away from the problem. That is why I say that if the year has gone to a close and we are not able to pay money into these funds, money that have been collected, then we ought to be thinking about wage overrun, because as for the wages, we have budgeted for it, and therefore we should not be having this problem.
Right,
I just think that the government has to come and explain where the money is and why they cannot pay into the account money that they have collected.
Right, we'll be pursuing this further, Mr. Kwating. We're grateful. We have on the line now the other telephone line, Executive Director of the Ghana Institute of Governance and Security, David Agbe. Mr. Agbe, good evening. Hello, David. Hello, David Agbe. Well, I think we don't have David Agbe, so we'll move on with our discussion. Also, tonight, staff of the National Disaster Management Organization picketed at the Finance Ministry and the Controller and Accountant General's Department, demanding up to about 26 months of unpaid salary. Meanwhile, NADMO has recently come under attack for a series of corrupt practices, including sharing of relief items among staff and mismanagement of funds. So are these partly to blame for NADMO's inability to meet its obligation to its staff? We will have some of the workers will be joining us in the studio to have a discussion on the matter. So as we talk about the demand for salaries which have delayed for as much as 26 months, what happened to all the corrupt allegations that have been leveled against NADMO, and you know, to the extent that they've been cited for sharing relief items among themselves. So we have one of the workers who is joining us, I think Abdul Aziz and Abdul Hamid. You are
Abdul Hamid.
Abdul Hamid. Now, you represent the NADMO Aggrieved Workers Association or something like that, right? Tell me quickly, I mean, NADMO, we've heard NADMO has not paid you for 26 months, and we spoke to the coordinator, the acting coordinator, who tells us that they've written a petition to the chief of staff, made requests for all of that so that your salaries will be paid to you and all. But I am concerned about the image of NADMO. NADMO has come into the news lately for a lot of things, including some mismanagement and corrupt practices. You feel that that's the reason why the money which is supposed to be used to pay you is not coming?
I don't think so.
You cannot say.
I cannot say that.
So what really are your concerns?
Ours is we've been working for more than 2 years. For instance, I think I've worked for 30 months now.
Wow.
30 months, yeah. I started in February 2013. We've worked up to 2014, December 2014. We were told that we will be given financial, we were told to come for our biometric registration. So we went in December 2014. We did the biometric registration. In January, the money was supposed to hit in our accounts. It didn't come. Then actually, it came in January in the validation system. It came. Our names were in it. It came, and we saw the names with the amounts we were supposed to get quoted.
But you didn't get the money. But you've worked for 30 months and you're not being paid. Why do you continue working?
See,
how do you survive?
We've been living on the benevolence of families and friends.
Just that? Or maybe sharing some of the relief items among yourselves?
I don't.
I
was disheartened when I read the story today that about a coordinator in Ga East. Yeah, I believe it's Ga East that has been arrested for. I can categorically tell you that in Ashanti region, where I am coming from, nothing of that sort is happening. It's
happening there. Yeah. So let me hear you too. I mean, the critical question is that why do you feel that you are not being paid? Is it that NADMO doesn't have the money, that government doesn't give money for your salaries, or what? What explanations do you get from the NADMO authorities why you have not been paid?
Yeah, thank you very much. The only explanation we've been getting is financial clearance. And for 2.5 years that we've been working,
and that's the same reason, of course, you get all the time, financial clearance.
And the fact is, when we were employed, we waited for about 17-18 months before we were called actually to come for our biometric registration. We were gladly informed, and we gladly came to Accra for our biometric registration at the headquarters. And the following month, as my brother said, everything went on. We saw our monies on the
your payslip, but you never
not our payslip, but on the controllers and accountants platform validation system. Everything came, all our money, to suggest that our money was going to hit our account, but it never did. It never did.
It never did. I'll have you pause, right? I have David Amewu, who earlier was having a discussion with us on the issue of calls by an ex-MP for the finance minister to be censured. He's joining us on the line quickly. Mr. Gray, your line was barred earlier, so we didn't get to hear what you were saying. Quickly, we're run out of time, but what is happening is sad. I don't want to use the word pathetic, in the sense that statutory funds to the NHIS, to the GET Fund, and the Road Fund have all not been paid, although the money have been collected. Now, calls by the former majority leader for a vote of no confidence to be passed in the finance minister have received mixed reactions. What's your quick comment on that?
Yes, Steve, thank you so much. I think that what the former majority leader said is actually rooted in the Constitution. If you pick your Constitution, Article 82 talks about the fact that if a minister of state does not perform
it functions very well, 2/3 of the parliamentarians could actually censor him such that they will be, they will be able to vote. And if they are able to get 2/3, then such a person could be removed.
David, we understand the constitutional obligations and what the Constitution say and all of that. What we actually wanted to establish was whether you feel that the call is reasonable. For example, considering that some statutory funds, like we're hearing, have not been paid as way back as 6 months. Is this fair, and what implication would that have on governance if it continues that the statutory funds are not being paid and the money being used for other things?
I think that the call is a reasonable one, but if you take this very clause, I may say that it is what I will call in political science a political symbolism, because the context says may. So if it is may, it is not shall, and it is not compulsory unless somebody or the minister does certain things very wrong. But I think in this perspective, the minister has a professional and a sense of professionalism to ensure that he disburses those funds. But I think that what is happening now is that government do not have money. And that is why they are finding it very difficult to pay all those statutory funds to the various agencies. But I think that it is a very good argument. Let's keep on to debate about the issue. But I think that as much as we, all of us, has also signed on to constitutional democracy, everything that we need to do it such that it is going to enrich democracy. And I think that the call is a nice one, but it will be very difficult for it to be, practicalized.
Ms. Agbe, we're grateful. We will have to talk about this a lot more when we have time. I'm afraid that our time is run out, so we might not have a lot of time to delve deeper into your issues. But I do hope that we can get to extract more from you when you get to radio. Quickly, what's the way forward for you? You're asking your salaries to be paid 26 months. If you don't get it, at what time? Or do you put timelines to? Let me come in.
We actually went to the finance ministry, and actually they've heard us out. We've met with the chief director, and we discussed our leadership. We discussed with him, and he has given us an assurance. And so we are taken by his words. So we are not listening to anyone. We are just taking him by his words that our salary, 750 clearance have been given, and we should expect 750 to be paid, and that we should give him from today to 30 days. The rest of us.
So you are calling on your people to come down,
we are calling on them
wait
to
for 30 days and then whatever action needs to be taken.
Of course.
I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you.
On today's big story, and that's where we draw the curtains. My name is Stephen Enti. We will be right back with Joe News Interactive.